The assassination attempt happened at 11:47 a.m. on a Tuesday that started like any other. I was reviewing applications from artists in Syria who needed creative citizenship to escape government persecution when the bullet shattered my office window, missing my head by 3 inches. In that split second, as glass fragments sparkled in the Parisian sunlight like deadly diamonds, I realized my creative nation-state hadn't just threatened business models and government policies. It had threatened something far more dangerous: the fundamental belief that human creativity should serve power instead of truth. Someone had decided that killing me was easier than competing with freedom. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Security appeared within seconds. Catherine's people, trained by intelligence agencies I wasn't supposed to know existed. They moved with military precision, securing the building, analyzing the bullet trajectory, coordinating with law enforcement while simultaneously making it clear that law enforcement was secondary to their own investigation. "Sniper," said Marcus Webb, now head of our security operations. "Professional setup. Government-grade equipment." This wasn't a random attack or corporate espionage. This was state-sponsored assassination. Marie sat beside me in the secure conference room, her face pale but determined. Which government? That's what we're about to find out. Within hours, Catherine arrived with intelligence reports that painted a terrifying picture. The creative nation-state had triggered a coordinated international response that went far beyond cultural policy. Defense departments, intelligence agencies, and strategic planning committees in 12 countries had classified our organization as a national security threat. "You've created something unprecedented," Catherine explained, spreading classified documents across the table. "A transnational entity that commands more loyalty from citizens than their own governments. From their perspective, you're not running a creative support program. You're leading a revolution that makes traditional nation-states obsolete." The scope was breathtaking and horrifying. Internal memos from various governments discussing creative insurgency, cultural rebellion, and the Chen threat, like I was leading an army instead of supporting artists. How did supporting creativity become a military threat? "Because creativity shapes reality," Catherine replied. "And anyone who controls how people imagine the world controls how they act in the world. You've given millions of people the resources to imagine alternatives to existing power structures." The intelligence reports revealed something that made the old-fashioned industry corruption look like petty theft. 17 countries had formed a secret coalition called the Cultural Stability Initiative, dedicated to eliminating what they termed destructive creative independence. The CSI included democracies and dictatorships, allies and enemies, nations that agreed on nothing except their shared fear of what I had created. American corporate executives worked alongside Chinese government officials. Russian oligarchs coordinated with European Union bureaucrats. Middle Eastern monarchs collaborated with tech billionaires. "Look at this," Marie said, studying communication intercepts. "They're not just targeting you personally. They're planning systematic elimination of every major figure in the creative nation-state." The hit list was extensive. Musicians who had used our resources to create protest songs. Writers who had published work critical of authoritarian governments. Visual artists whose work challenged corporate messaging. Film directors who had made documentaries exposing corruption. 378 names. All marked for neutralization through methods ranging from financial destruction to physical elimination. "They're planning to decapitate the entire creative freedom movement," I realized. "And they're starting with you," Catherine confirmed. "Because killing the founder sends a message to everyone else about the cost of creative independence." While we analyzed intelligence reports, the crackdown began worldwide with surgical precision. Artists who had been thriving under our programs suddenly faced tax audits, visa problems, and mysterious technical difficulties with their projects. Sarah Kim, a Korean filmmaker who had used our resources to document government corruption, was arrested on fabricated espionage charges. Miguel Santos, a Brazilian musician whose songs about economic inequality had gone viral, died in what police called a random motorcycle accident. Elena Volkov, a Russian novelist who had written about oligarch control, simply disappeared. The attacks weren't random violence. They were systematic elimination of creative voices that had become too independent, too influential, too dangerous to established power structures. "They're making examples," I said, reading reports that came in hourly from our global network. "Showing other artists what happens when you accept support from us instead of working within traditional systems." But the crackdown had an unexpected effect. Instead of frightening artists into submission, it radicalized them. Creative communities that had never been political began organizing resistance movements. Artists who had avoided controversy started creating explicitly revolutionary work. "They've made a strategic error," Catherine observed. "They've confirmed that creative freedom is actually dangerous to existing power structures. That makes it more appealing, not less." The membership in our creative nation-state doubled within 2 weeks of the assassination attempt. Artists around the world applied for creative citizenship not despite the danger, but because of it. Being targeted by 17 governments was apparently excellent marketing for creative independence. 3 days after the assassination attempt, I received a video message that made everything personal. The sender was someone I recognized but hadn't seen since Fashion Week. Celeste Dubois, the French fashion matriarch who had orchestrated my original destruction. She looked older, harder, more dangerous than I remembered. The elegant salon where she held court had been replaced by what appeared to be a military command center. Maps, screens, communication equipment. She had evolved from fashion power broker to something approaching a war criminal. "Sophia Chen," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to ordering deaths. "You've exceeded even my expectations for destructive arrogance." The video showed images of creative nation-state facilities around the world. Our offices, workshops, collaboration spaces, and residential communities where artists lived and worked freely. You thought you could destroy the natural order of creative commerce. Replace systematic control with chaotic independence. But chaos has consequences. The images shifted to show what appeared to be detailed architectural plans and security analyses of our facilities. Someone had been conducting surveillance for months, preparing for coordinated attacks. The Cultural Stability Initiative represents more than governments and corporations, child. We represent civilization itself against the barbarism of unrestricted creative expression. Her final words were delivered with the casual certainty of someone announcing the weather. By the end of this month, your creative nation-state will be eliminated. Your artists will be dead, imprisoned, or returned to proper supervision. And you will understand that some revolutions succeed only in proving why revolution is impossible. Security became our primary concern overnight. Every creative nation-state facility worldwide was fortified like a military installation. Artists who had signed up to pursue creative freedom found themselves living under protection that resembled witness protection programs. Our Paris headquarters transformed into something between a corporate office and a fortress. Armed guards, electronic surveillance, secure communication systems, and escape routes that could evacuate the entire staff within minutes. The creative workspace I had envisioned as an open, collaborative environment became a bunker. "This isn't what I wanted to create," I said, watching artists pass through metal detectors to reach their studios. "I wanted to free creativity, not militarize it." "Freedom always requires protection," Catherine replied. "The question is whether you're willing to fight for it or surrender it for the illusion of safety." But the fortress mentality was changing us in ways I hadn't anticipated. Artists who had joined us seeking creative freedom were now focused on creative survival. Instead of making art about beauty, love, and human experience, they were making art about resistance, defiance, and war. "We're becoming what they said we were," Marie observed. "A revolutionary movement instead of a creative support system." She was right. The creative nation-state was evolving from its original mission of supporting independent art into something more militant, more political, more threatening to existing systems. The attacks against us were creating exactly the kind of radical organization our enemies claimed we had been all along. The betrayal came from inside our most secure facility. James Morrison, our head of North American operations, had been feeding information to the Cultural Stability Initiative for 3 months. Financial records, artist locations, security protocols, planned expansions, everything needed to coordinate maximum destruction. We discovered his betrayal through encrypted communications Catherine's intelligence network intercepted. James discussing which artists would be most valuable to eliminate, which facilities would be easiest to neutralize, which operations could be disrupted most efficiently. But James wasn't motivated by money or ideology. His betrayal was personal. "He applied to the original Creative Freedom Initiative 2 years ago," Marie explained, reviewing his files. "We rejected his application because his work showed signs of manufactured authenticity. Carefully calculated rebellion designed to appeal to corporate sponsors." James had been creating exactly the kind of controlled, marketable creativity that our programs were designed to bypass. When we chose authenticity over commercial viability, we had inadvertently excluded people whose creativity was shaped by existing power structures. So he's destroying us because we wouldn't validate his compromise with the system? He's destroying us because we proved his compromise was unnecessary. That authentic creativity could survive without corporate approval. The psychology was devastating. James wasn't working for our enemies because he disagreed with creative freedom. He was working for them because creative freedom made his own artistic choices look like betrayals of his own talent. The invitation arrived with James's signature, but we knew it was a trap. The Global Arts and Culture Summit in Monaco, hosted by International Cultural Preservation Societies. Every major figure in the creative nation-state was invited to a gala that would celebrate diverse approaches to creative development. "They're planning to eliminate everyone at once," Catherine said, analyzing the invitation with professional suspicion. "Get all the leadership in one location and solve their problem definitively." But refusing to attend would send a message of fear to our global network. Artists who had joined us seeking courage and independence would see their leaders hiding from confrontation. We have to go, I decided. But we go prepared for war. The preparation was extensive. Security teams, escape routes, communication protocols, and contingency plans that assumed the worst-case scenario. We weren't just attending a gala. We were walking into what might be the final battle for creative independence. Marie looked at me as we prepared to leave for Monaco. Are you sure about this? Once we enter that room, everything changes. Win or lose, there's no going back to just supporting artists. She was right. Attending the gala meant accepting that the creative nation-state was at war with existing power structures. That supporting creativity required fighting everyone who profited from controlling it. There was never any going back, I said. From the moment I signed my first contract with Alexander, this was always going to end with someone destroying someone else completely. The gala was held in the same compound where Catherine had first offered me power over global creativity. But the atmosphere was completely different. Instead of elegant intimidation, the energy was hostile anticipation. Everyone in the room knew this was a battlefield disguised as a social event. The guest list read like a catalog of global power. Government ministers, corporate executives, intelligence officials, and cultural authorities who collectively controlled most of the world's creative industries. They had come to witness the elimination of creative independence. Celeste Dubois held court near the main entrance, accepting congratulations like a military commander celebrating victory before the battle was won. She wore elegant armor, a dress that looked like evening wear but was clearly designed for protection. When she saw me enter, her smile was arctic. The infamous Sophia Chen. Still believing that talent can overcome systematic power. Still believing that power can substitute for talent, I replied. The conversation around us stopped. This wasn't social banter. This was a declaration of war delivered in evening wear. You've corrupted millions of creative people, Celeste continued. Convinced them that independence was possible when survival has always required proper allegiance. I've shown them that proper allegiance is to their own creativity instead of your profit margins. And now you'll watch them die for that lesson. The threat wasn't metaphorical. As we spoke, security personnel positioned themselves around the room with military precision. Artists who had accompanied me were being subtly isolated from potential exit routes. The gala was transforming into an execution chamber. Catherine appeared beside me like a guardian angel in Chanel. But instead of offering protection, she delivered information that changed everything. The Cultural Stability Initiative isn't just targeting the creative nation-state, she said quietly. They're planning to restructure global creative industries completely. Make independent creativity impossible for anyone, anywhere. She showed me documents on her phone that outlined the post-elimination plan. Government-controlled creative education. Corporate-mandated artistic output. International agreements that would make independent creative work illegal in most countries. They're not trying to stop your program, I realized. They're using our existence to justify eliminating creative freedom entirely. The scope was breathtaking. The creative nation-state had given them the perfect excuse to implement total control over human creativity. Our success had demonstrated that independent creativity was possible, which made it necessary to ensure it would never be possible again. You've been played, Catherine continued. Not by me, not by Victor or Victoria, but by everyone. Your entire journey has been designed to justify the ultimate crackdown on creative independence. The implications were staggering. My escape from control, my building of creative freedom, my success in proving alternatives were possible. All of it had been allowed to succeed because that success would justify its own elimination. So what happens now? Catherine's smile was sharp as broken glass. Now we find out whether 3 years of creative freedom has generated enough power to survive what's coming next. The attacks began at midnight Monaco time, coordinated across 26 time zones with military precision. Creative nation-state facilities were simultaneously raided by local authorities citing various legal justifications. Artists were arrested on charges ranging from tax evasion to terrorism. Bank accounts were frozen. Communication systems were compromised. In the Monaco compound, we watched our global network being systematically dismantled in real time. The screens that had once shown creative projects and artist collaborations now displayed arrest footage, facility shutdowns, and what appeared to be the complete elimination of everything we had built. 3,000 arrests in the first hour, reported Marcus Webb, monitoring communications from what remained of our security network. Estimated 70% of active creative nation-state participants now in custody or missing. The efficiency was breathtaking and horrifying. In less than 4 hours, they had eliminated 3 years of creative freedom infrastructure and imprisoned most of the people who had dared to believe independence was possible. It's over, said James Morrison, appearing from the crowd of celebrating officials. Your little experiment in creative anarchy is finished. He looked different than I remembered. Harder, more confident, wearing his betrayal like expensive jewelry. The transformation from rejected artist to enforcement agent was complete. The Cultural Stability Initiative thanks you for your cooperation, he continued. Your success demonstrated exactly why systematic control is necessary. Creative freedom isn't just impractical, it's dangerous to social stability. Standing in the Monaco compound, watching the elimination of everything I had built, I felt something I hadn't experienced since that first night in Paris. Not fear or anger or desperation. Clarity. The creative nation-state hadn't failed because it was weak. It had failed because it was still playing by their rules. Still accepting that power came from institutions, resources, and official recognition. But creativity didn't need institutions. It didn't need resources. It didn't need recognition. Creativity only needed truth. I walked to the center of the gala, where Celeste was accepting congratulations from government ministers and corporate executives. When I reached the main display area, I pulled out my phone and activated something I had prepared for this exact moment. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, my voice carrying across the celebration, you've successfully eliminated the creative nation-state. Congratulations. The room fell silent, waiting for surrender or final defiance. But you've made one critical error in your victory. You assumed the creative nation-state was the infrastructure we built. The offices, the programs, the official recognition. I activated my phone, and every screen in the compound switched to the same image. Not footage of destroyed facilities or arrested artists, but something far more dangerous. The creative nation-state was never buildings or bank accounts. It was an idea. The idea that human creativity doesn't need permission to exist. The screens showed live feeds from around the world. Not of official facilities being raided, but of informal creative communities that had emerged organically from our original network. Artists working in hidden spaces, collaborating through encrypted channels, creating work that needed no institutional support. You destroyed our infrastructure. But infrastructure was never the point. The live feeds revealed what none of us had expected. While official creative nation-state facilities were being eliminated, the artists we had supported had created something more resilient and more dangerous. A completely informal network that operated without any central control. Musicians collaborating through gaming platforms. Writers sharing work through social media direct messages. Visual artists selling pieces through cryptocurrency networks that no government could track or control. You gave us resources to prove creative independence was possible, I continued, as the screens showed dozens of underground creative communities operating in real time. But resources weren't what made it possible. Belief was what made it possible. The celebration in the Monaco compound was transforming into something else. Confusion, then concern, then what looked like panic as officials realized what they were seeing. Every artist you arrest will be replaced by 10 more who learned from their example. Every facility you close will be replaced by 20 informal workshops. Every program you eliminate will be replaced by hundreds of organic collaborations. Celeste stepped forward, her composure finally cracking. You're talking about chaos. Creative anarchy. The end of quality control and professional standards. I'm talking about freedom. Real freedom. The kind that doesn't need permission, doesn't require resources, and can't be eliminated because it exists in human imagination rather than institutional structures. The confrontation was being live-streamed by multiple sources, security cameras, phones, communication systems that neither side controlled. Within minutes, footage of the gala was spreading across every social media platform, encrypted messaging app, and informal communication network worldwide. But the most powerful footage wasn't of me speaking or officials responding. It was of the underground creative communities continuing to work while their official counterparts were being eliminated. The contrast was stark and undeniable. Formal creative industries being shut down by government action. Informal creative communities thriving despite government action. You've just provided the most effective marketing for creative independence in human history, I said, watching the live stream view counts climb into the millions. People worldwide are watching you eliminate official creativity while unofficial creativity flourishes. The psychological impact was immediate. Social media exploded with artists sharing work through unofficial channels. Musicians posting songs directly to personal accounts. Writers publishing stories through individual blogs. Visual artists selling work through personal networks. The infrastructure you destroyed was the compromised position, I realized. The formal creative nation-state was what we created when we still thought we needed official recognition. What you're seeing now is what creativity looks like when it stops asking for permission. As dawn broke over Monaco, it became clear that the Cultural Stability Initiative had achieved a perfect victory that was also a perfect defeat. They had eliminated every official structure of creative independence while accidentally inspiring the emergence of unofficial creative independence on a scale that made our original programs look modest by comparison. Governments around the world were discovering that arresting artists was easy. Arresting everyone with creative capacity was impossible. The crackdown had taught millions of people that creative freedom wasn't something institutions could give or take away. It was something that existed whenever people chose to exercise it. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number, but this time I recognized the pattern. Not a threat or an offer, but information. What you started can't be stopped because it was never really started. It was always there, waiting for someone to prove it was possible. The underground networks you're seeing now are just the beginning. When creativity doesn't need permission, it doesn't need protection either. The real revolution isn't about freeing artists from control. It's about freeing creativity itself from the assumption that it needs anyone else's approval to exist. Congratulations. You've just made institutional creative control obsolete forever. The question now is whether you're ready for a world where anyone can create anything without asking anyone for permission. Someone who understands what comes next. I looked around the Monaco compound, where officials were discovering that their complete victory had been a complete miscalculation. Where the elimination of creative infrastructure had inspired creative activity that needed no infrastructure. The creative nation-state was dead. Long live creative independence. But as I watched millions of people around the world discovering they could create whatever they wanted without institutional support, I realized this was only the beginning. Some revolutions destroy existing systems. Others make them irrelevant. We had just made the entire concept of controlling creativity irrelevant forever. They thought destroying my empire would end creative independence. Instead, it inspired something they never imagined, millions of people creating without permission, sharing without institutions, thriving without approval. But when anyone can create anything, when all barriers disappear, when creativity becomes completely free, some people create beautiful things, others create dangerous things. The revolution I started is about to become something I never intended. And the question isn't whether creativity should be free. It's whether the world can survive complete creative freedom. The final battle is coming.